Magandang buhay! Together with my partner Hannah, I will present to you Module 1, Analysis of Statements, and she will explain to you Module 3, Types of Knowledge Claim. Let's start with Module 1. We all know that sentences are grammatically classified into 5 main types. Interrogative sentence when you ask a question. Imperative sentence when you issue commands. Exclamatory sentence when you are surprised or express pleasure. Expletive sentence when you are daydreaming or expressing a desire or wish. Declarative sentence when you make a statement, offer an opinion, declare a fact, or provide an explanation. But, according to Wittgenstein, the term language game is meant to bring into prominence the fact that speaking of language is part of an activity or a form of life. In short, according to him, to imagine a language meant to imagine a form of life. It is a valuable exercise to imagine a sentence of any sort functioning in several different language games. When it does this, it takes on a different meaning. For example, there was a storm today. Imagine how a sentence like this might function in reporting an event, speculating about an event, presenting results from an experiment, play acting, singing catches, and so forth. Some sentences do not make sense in all language games, but whenever they do, they mean something different in different language games. One important use of language, balik natin. One important use of language is to use something to assert a knowledge claim. When you assert a knowledge claim, you claim or deny something in a world that can be either true or false. The linguistic bearer of a knowledge claim is often called a proposition or a statement. So, paano ba tong language game na 'to? 'Di ba sabi diyan yung mga interrogative, imperative, exclamatory, yung mga gano'n, hindi natin pinagkaawayan yung context nila kasi 'di naman sila nagse-state ng something is a fact or hindi, gano'n. Like kunwari sinabi, "Isarado mo yung pinto." Yung statement na ba na yan may fact or false na laman? 'Di ba wala naman? Kunwari kahit hindi mo naman sundin yun, hindi naman nagiging false o hindi naman nagiging fact yun. Kasi nga yung mga ganyang type, you are not making a knowledge claim. Yung mga ganyang sentences, wala silang truth values. Kasi wala ka namang kiniklaim or dinedeny. Pero iba yung case kapag declarative sentence yung ginamit. Kasi doon, pwede kang mag-claim or mag-deny ng kahit ano. Next, sentence and statement. Alam naman natin na yung concept na dog, hindi yung word na dog ha, pwede siyang i-express sa iba't ibang way. Like, pwede mo siyang sabihing aso, ganon. Kapag narinig mo naman yun, alam mo namang parehas lang yung tinutukoy doon. Same din yun sa mga sentences. Kunwari, sinabi mong the cat is on the mat. Hindi lang yun yung way para sabihin mo na yung pusa nasa itaas ng mat. Pwede ring the mat has a cat on top. Ganon, same lang naman sila ng ibig sabihin. That being so, we can have many terms and sentences not necessarily in the same language expressing the same concept and same knowledge claim. Yan. Next, most philosophers accept that a sentence is not the bearer of truth or falsehood, but it is the statement it expresses. They agreed na truth and falsehood manggagaling sa properties ng statement na ina-express ng sentences. So, bali paano mo malalaman kung sentence lang yung statement or may statement pala siya ganon? Ay, paano mo malalaman kung sentence lang yung sentence or may statement siya ganon? Tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, kapag nagka-assert or nagde-deny. Meaning kasi kapag ganon, gumagawa ka ng knowledge claim. So bakit need muna na statement bago gumawa ng knowledge claim instead na sentence itself? Kasi raw yung mga sentence hindi pwedeng maging true or false dahil sa isang sentence pwedeng magkaroon ng maraming statements. So bali sa Module 3 na ituturo naman ni Hannah, matututunan nyo kung paano mag-sort out ng two or more statements sa single sentence. In conclusion, therefore, it is important to discriminate between the sentence and the statement if you want to play the language game of the philosophers when they conduct philosophical analysis. Next naman is figure out natin how do we analyze the truth value of statements. Sa pagkakaintindi ko, may tatlong pwedeng classification. Una, nakapag-prove ka na may knowledge claim tapos na-prove mo din na totoo yun, like true siya. Pangalawa, nakapag-prove ka na may knowledge claim pero false siya. Panghuli naman, hindi mo na-prove na may knowledge claim so matik hindi mo na pwede sabihin na true or false yung something. So bali, example, may declarative sentence tayo which is the cat is on the mat. Sa una, kung may mat at may pusa, tapos yung pusa nasa mat, nakapag-prove ka na may knowledge claim. Tapos na-prove mo din na totoo yun. Bakit? Kasi totoong may pusa tsaka mat, tapos yung pusa totoong nasa mat. Sa pangalawa naman, meron ding pusa at may mat pero yung pusa wala sa mat. Bali nakapag-prove ka na may knowledge claim pero false siya. Bakit? Kasi nga totoong may pusa tsaka may mat pero wala raw sa mat yung pusa. Last, walang pusa tsaka mat. So bali dito, unang step pa lang na proving na may knowledge claim, palpak na. In short, you have not succeeded in expressing a knowledge claim. All in all, the method of determining the truth value of a knowledge claim by an appeal to something external to it, to a non-verbal reality like the state of affairs, is the fountainhead of many important concepts and many theories in philosophy. Next naman. Last slide for Module 1. There are three principles governing the analysis of the truth value of statements. Aristotle even called them three laws of thought. Una, principle of identity. If a statement is true, then it is true. If a statement is false, then it is false. The truth value of a statement is stable over time. Example, all bachelors are unmarried males. It's obvious naman na yung statement na yan is constant, regular, and hindi na magbabago. Talaga namang unmarried males yung mga bachelors, di ba? Next, principles of non-contradiction. A statement cannot be both true and false at the same time and in the same respect, often confused with the concept of inconsistency. When two statements are inconsistent, this means that both statements can be false but both cannot be true. Example, the blackboard is green. Kunwari, may knowledge claim na the blackboard is green. Yung contradictory knowledge claim nun is the blackboard is not green. So bali para ang gusto niya lang sabihin dito is, if two statements are contradictory, it follows that if the affirmative is true, then the denial is always false. Or kapag yung affirmative is false, then the denial is always true. So kunwari, kung totoo na green yung blackboard, yung denial na the blackboard is not green, always false siya. Kahit anumang kulay talaga yung blackboard na yan. Pero nga, di ba, lagi raw nako-confuse yung principle of non-contradiction sa concept of inconsistency. So, balik tayo sa the blackboard is green. Yung statement na yan kasi, di ba, minsan di siya totoo. Like, may ibang blackboard kasi na white. So, bali bukod sa statement na the blackboard is green, pwede rin yung statement na the blackboard is white. So, pag ganon, yung parehas na statement na yan, pwede silang both na false. Pero hindi pwedeng parehas na fact. Kasi syempre no, kunwari may blackboard sa harap mo. Hindi naman pwedeng parehas green tsaka parehas na white buo yan, di ba? E di kunwari yung blackboard sa harap mo, color green. Ibig sabihin, fact yung statement na the blackboard is green. Pero false yung statement na the blackboard is white. Tapos kunwari naman yung blackboard sa harap mo, black yung kulay. edi parehas yung sinasabing statement na false. In short, when two statements are inconsistent, this means that both statements can be false but both cannot be true. But when two statements are contradictory, one is false and the other must be true, and vice versa. Tawag ng mga logicians sa relationship na yan is truth functional. Last, principle of excluded middle. A statement can have only truth values. Either it is true or it is false and nothing else. It states that every proposition must be either true or false, that there is no middle ground. Yan, may example dyan, calculus daw. So bali, that's all for Module 1. I hope na you've learned something kahit papano. Next is Module 3. You may speak now, Hannah.
So hi everyone, my name is Hannah and I'm going to talk about Module 3, Types of Knowledge Claim. In the past modules, we have discussed numerous types of concepts, as there are numerous uses of words. But now, let us now focus on our inquiry on the epistemological classifications of knowledge claims. Because these classifications is needed in order for you to internalize complex and sophisticated skills of composing arguments. So, let us start with logical positivism. About 5 decades ago, many philosophers debated on how many types of knowledge claims there are. While it seems that the controversy has been resolved and forgotten, there are still many valuable lessons that can be learned from the debate. Let me trace the roots of the controversy. The logical positivists of the 1930s, led by Marge Slick, developed a theory of knowledge patterned after the epistemology of David Hume. The positivists accepted Hume's epistemological framework that there are only two sources of knowledge. According to the two sources of knowledge are reason and sense perception. From the faculty of reason, we have the formal knowledge. The typical examples of formal knowledge came from logic, mathematics, algebra, and geometry. And from the sense perception, mainly the five senses, we have the empirical knowledge. The typical examples of empirical knowledge came from the natural and social sciences, like physics, biology, psychology, and etc. Since there are only two sources of knowledge, ina-acknowledge nila na may two types of knowledge lang. And note, all knowledge claims can only be either formal and empirical. As I noted earlier, the two types of knowledge claims are formal claim and empirical claim. The faculty of reason would guarantee formal knowledge, meaning yung formal knowledge, it explores knowledge and reasoning using formal tools, like from math and logics, while the faculty of sense perception would guarantee empirical knowledge, meaning it is more of from gained experience rather than from innate ideas or deductive reasoning. The division between the two knowledge claims led to the division of only two epistemological meaningful statements, which you can see on the left text box on the slide. When formal knowledge claim is made, it is made by using an analytical statements. For example, square of the hypotenuse is equal to the square of the two sides. And when empirical knowledge claim is made, it is made using an empirical statement. The example is that the sun will rise tomorrow. So let's move forward to these, the two theories of truth. David Hume's dichotomy or simply yung pag-compare and contrast ni David Hume sa relations of ideas and matters of fact, nagled siya sa divisions of the two theories of truth. This means that we verify an empirical claim by the use of correspondence theory, and we verify a formal claim by the use of the coherence theory of truth. So, what is correspondence theory and coherence theory? Correspondence theories claims that true beliefs and true statements corresponds with facts, while coherence theories, the truth is what coheres with the rest of our knowledge, meaning beliefs must be logically consistent with other true beliefs in order for it to be true. Um, we will tackle this part more on sa Module 5, the theories of truth. So, para mas madali nating malaman kung anong theory of truth yung gagamitin, we have to learn first how to classify knowledge claims according to their epistemic characteristics. For example, to assert an empirical knowledge claim, you are asserting or denying exists in the world. Like we have to describe ourselves, our seatmates, or our surroundings using a declarative sentences. For example, the weather is cold. I am very attentive today. The girl beside me is wearing a red dress. The weather is warm. My classmates are noisy. Notice that the truth or falsehood of my claims or my examples can only be determined by the use of one or a combinations of any of our five senses. This means that we are using correspondence theory of truth. We know how to observe in order to make and determine kung mali ba or tama yung mga sinabi kong claims. In contrast, in analytic claims, we verify the truth of such statements with the use of coherence theory. This is coherent with the convention of a linguistic system. The intention, namely the trait or set of traits, become the predicate of an analytic statement. For example, puppies are young dogs, all bachelors are unmarried males, fathers are male parents. In the examples that I've said, the claim that puppies are young dogs appears to be making an empirical description about an animal. But on closer analysis, the statement is a claim about the use or the meaning of the term puppies. The statement is making a claim that the term puppies is used in many language games to refer to any young dog. This type of knowledge claim is called formal or analytic, and the statement used to make that claim is called analytic statement. So for us to understand analytic and empirical claims, we made a table on the next slide. Let's move forward. Immanuel Kant defined an analytic judgment as on where the predicate is contained in the subject. If we assert the statements on the left side of the table, we can easily notice that the predicate is being sustained and visualize the definition of Kant. In the language of Kant, if the predicate is outside of the subject, it is not part of the intention of the concept. So if we assert the right side of the table, the brothers are naughty, fathers are strict, all bachelors are unhappy, it is clearly not an analytical statement. They are empirical, because we can easily notice how the predicate is not contained in the intentions of the bachelors, father, and brothers. Hence, if we deny the statements on the right side, it would not entail a contradiction. But kapag yung nasa left side yung i-deny natin, magkakaroon agad ng contradiction kasi you are automatically deducting the intention of the concept. In addition, we want you to bear in mind that the paradigm of analytic statements comes from formal systems like mathematics and logic. For instance, 5 plus 2 is equals to what? 7. It is a good example of an analytic statement. Its truth depends on its coherence with the arithmetical system where it is a well-formed formula or WFF. Another example is the sum of the angles of a triangle is equal to 180 degrees. In Unit 3, we will study many tautological statements in symbolic logic. So, for example, if we say, either I pass Philo or I don't, to be or not to be, if your statement is true, then it is true. Those are tautological statements. Tautological statements are always true, and they are classic examples of analytic statements. Also, the laws and theorems of algebra and geometry are members of the class of analytic statements because they are technically known as well-formed formulas. So all in all, how many types of meaningful statements are there? The controversy started when the logical positivists arrogantly stated that there are only two meaningful statements, corresponding to the two types of knowledge claims, which is the analytic or empirical. If your statement is empirical, then there must be a method of verifying the statement, and strange as it may seem, the meaning of the statement was identified with the method of verification itself. So when you cannot verify a statement, it has no method, therefore it is meaningless. Hence, the statement has no cognitive content, meaning the statement has no truth value. Many philosophers of different persuasion reacted almost violently to this division, because the implication is clear. Ethical, moral, aesthetic, legal, political, and even religious statements are judged to be meaningless statements because they are neither analytic nor empirical but evaluative. So, status of evaluative claims. When you judge an action or behavior to be good or bad, moral or immoral, right or wrong, you have made an evaluative claim. An evaluative claim is your judgment about the value or disvalue, the positive or negative worth of an act, behavior, or object. This judgment has its source from what David Hume called passions and emotions. Passions and emotions are genuine impressions giving rise to genuine ideas. Thus, David Hume would never label evaluative judgment emanating from passions and emotions to be meaningless. So, if we want a candidate for a third source of knowledge where we can anchor a third type of knowledge, the best candidate are passions and emotions. There are numerous variations of evaluative claims. Among the most common are moral claims like sex without love is immoral, religious statements like polygamy is a sin, and aesthetic statements like the sunset is beautiful. So let's move forward. On status of evaluative claims, a case could be made about this declarative form of evaluative statements to be either true or false, like analytic or empirical statements. But when you prescribe what should or ought to be done, or when you state what actions are obligatory or prohibited, you have already made an evaluative statement in the form of a duty or obligation. For example, you should practice what you preach. Sex education should be taught in school, then study your lessons every day. These commands are in the prescriptive form. In contrast, if the command is in the negative form, it is technically called proscriptive. The Ten Commandments have the prescriptive format. Common examples of prescriptions are do not cheat in the exam, do not forget to pay your bills, you are not required to obey an immoral order. So lastly, let's go to the next slide, please. So for the whole module 3, here are some of the key points that we wish for you to understand well. In order to be able to choose which theory of truth to apply, you must first decide what type of knowledge claim you wish to verify. And number 2, if the claim is formal or analytic, we use coherence. And if it is an empirical claim, you use the correspondence theory of truth. And lastly, if the claim is evaluative, the justification rests on the strength of the public approval or intersubjective consensus of the concerned public. That is all. Thank you.